Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games, where we feed our people with relatable content and our victory condition is your satisfaction. I am Harry, and before we go any further, please hit the subscribe button somewhere on the lower right hand of your screen. That way we can all move on with our lives and enjoy the rest of this video. Today we have another board game review, and it's a very special one because it's the first review copies that I've received from a publisher, in particular from Upper Deck Entertainment. I will be reviewing this game right here, or this expansion I should say. This is Spider-Man Homecoming Legendary Expansion. I will give you guys a preview of some of the different cards. If you want to see a full playthrough of Marvel Legendary to see how it plays and its rules, check out my playthrough video of Marvel Legendary. You can catch that for those specifics. Today I'll just be previewing the different cards that this expansion adds to the game, and then I will close off with my final thoughts. Let's go to the game. Alright, now we're going to look at some of the content that this expansion adds to the overall series here. First, we'll start with the schemes. We have this scheme right here, Scavenge Alien Weaponry. This scheme adds 7 twists to the deck. You add an extra henchman group of 10 cards as smugglers, and the smugglers have Striker. And Striker is a new keyword here in this expansion. Basically, the way Striker works is for every Master Strike that's already come out in the game, you're going to add that much to the attack cost of that villain that has the Striker keyword. The scheme twist here, the scheme says when a twist comes out, you play 2 cards from the villain deck. And evil wins when 3 villains per player have escaped or the villain deck runs out. I have to say I found this to be pretty difficult for solo play at least, and didn't find it very interesting. Then we have this one here, Distract the Hero. This, for the setup, it says you have 8 twists in the villain deck. You use at least 1 Spidey Friend hero. And when a twist comes out, if you get any victory points this turn, you put this twist on the bottom of the villain deck. Otherwise, you stack this twist next to the scheme as a villainous interruption, and evil wins when there has been 5 villainous interruptions. I found this twist to be okay. It was all right. The last 2 twists out of the schemes out of the 4 that this game comes with, this expansion comes with, I found to be the most interesting. First, here we have Ferry Disaster. And this here, you have 9 twists in the deck. You put the bystander stack above the sewers as the ferry. And when the first 4 twists comes out, if there's a villain in the city space directly below the ferry, you KO 2 bystanders from that ferry. Whether you KO'd anything or not, the ferry moves 1 space to the left. And then for twists 5 through 8, the same exact thing happens, except when the ferry moves, it moves to the right. And finally, when twist number 9 comes out, you KO half of the bystanders from the bystander deck, rounding up. Evil wins when 7 bystanders are in the KO pile and or escape pile. I found this to be a very fascinating twist that involved lots of tension, lots of spatial manipulation and orientation even, as you saw the ferry move along the city, and factored that in as you decided which villains you were going to defeat. Because again, wherever the ferry is, the villain that's directly below it impacts the potential of bystanders dying. I found it to be very, very neat. I like it when the legendary system gets creative with their schemes in particular and finds different ways of involving not only the game space, but actual physical space into the gameplay. So that was that one. And then finally, the last one here, we have Explosion at the Washington Monument. And this one has 8 twists. You shuffle 18 bystanders and 14 wounds into 1 deck, and then you deal them out evenly into 8 separate decks. And you put these decks, you line them up in a row, and each of these decks represent a floor of the Washington Monument. And whenever you fight a villain, you are allowed to take a peek at one of those face-down cards from any of the floors, and if it's a bystander, you get to rescue it. But if it's a wound, you put it back face up, so at least you know what it is for next time. Whenever a twist comes out, you KO the topmost floor of the monument, and you gain 1 of the wounds from that stack. Evil wins when 10 bystanders are in the KO pile and or escape pile, or when all the floors are KO'd. Again, I find this one to be neat. They're working with the space around the game. You're literally creating this stack or this row of of cards that represent a building that's being knocked down little by little. I found that to be real neat. It creates for some really tight and tense decision-making opportunities throughout the game. So this one was really, really neat. Now we move on to the villains. And the first villain group we have is the Salvagers. And these guys are pretty weak and lame, I must say. You have Shocker number 1, as you can imagine. There's also going to be a Shocker number 2. He has Striker, which again I explained means that for every strike that's already come out, you're going to add to his attack cost, which already starts at 3. He has an escape ability, which each player reveals one of these yellow heroes or discards a card, right? So that's Shocker number 1. Then right here we have Hybrid Alien Tech. So yes, in this game, inanimate objects serve as characters and villains. So this is one of the villains for the Salvagers group. Again, this is a striker. It has a fight effect of KOing one of your 0-cost heroes, and an escape effect that the current player reveals a blue hero or gains a 0-cost card from the KO pile, right? It has a startup cost of 4 attack. Then we have the Tinkerer here. And the Tinkerer has a fight effect. You get +1 recruit for each of the black or tech heroes in the headquarters, which is really helpful because there are a lot of tech heroes in this particular expansion. It also has an escape ability. Each player reveals a hero here, in a tech hero, or gains a wound, right? So there's the Tinkerer. And then finally here we got Shocker number 2. He has a startup cost of 5. He has an ambush effect. Each player reveals their hand and discards all the cards with the same card name as a card in the headquarters. Woo. And then his escape effect is basically the same thing. And now the second villain group. As you can see here, they were scraping from the bottom of the barrel because we have Adrian Toomes Equipment making a cameo here as a villain group. So first of all, we have the Razor Talons, which has a startup attack cost of 2, but it does have the striker ability. It has fight effect. The next hero you gain this turn has wall crawl, and wall crawl is a returning keyword from a previous expansion from the what's it called, Paint the Town Red Spider-Man expansion. And basically the way wall crawl works is when you draft or recruit a hero card, instead of placing it on your discard pile as you normally would, you immediately get to place that card on the top of your deck. So it will be ready for you on your next turn. So that's a neat feature there. Then we have here high-tech helmet, startup cost, attack cost of 3. Again, a striker ability. And it has fight, Danger Sense 3. And Danger Sense is a new keyword in this game. And the way Danger Sense works is, and it's basically playing on Spider-Man's Spider Sense, but they call it Danger Sense because Spider-Man's not the only one who has this keyword in this game. The way Danger Sense works is it'll always be followed by a number, in this case a 3. That number indicates how many cards you're going to turn over from the top of the villain deck. And for each of those cards that's an actual villain, you will get to add to your total attack cost. Then you must place those cards back in any order of your choice. So this keyword, Danger Sense, is very helpful. It allows you to manipulate the deck. It allows you to gain a sense of control of the deck. It gives you that foresight or that foreknowledge as to what cards are going to be coming, so you can avoid or at least postpone some very catastrophic schemes or master strikes that you would otherwise like to avoid. You would just place those cards back to your convenience in the order of your liking. So this is a very, very helpful ability, along with adding a few attack points to each of your heroes that has that keyword. It allows you, again, to manipulate that deck a little bit, right? Which is very helpful, especially for certain schemes. So this card, when you defeat it, will give you a Danger Sense 3. All right, then we have here the Chitauri Weapon Assault. This has a startup cost of 4. Again, this is a striker. Fight effect, KO one of your heroes with a recruit icon. Escape effect, each player discards a card with a recruit icon. Then here, finally, we have the Turbine Powered. And this has a startup cost of 5. Again, where he's a striker. Ambush, Turbine Powered captures a bystander and then move the villain to the rooftops. And if there's already a villain there, you swap them. So this villain will always start pretty advanced and very close to escaping. And that's that for the regular villains in this expansion. Now we will move on to the Masterminds. And first of all, we have good old Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, who has a startup cost of 5, but he's a double striker. And if you hadn't guessed it, that means for every Master Strike, instead of adding 1 to his base attack cost, you will add 2. So he always leads the Salvagers, and his Master Strike means that whenever a Master Strike comes out, starting from the sewers, each villain in the city uses an escape ability. And in this expansion, lots of the villains actually come with escape abilities. So it's very, very relevant for this expansion, right? So let's see some of the tactics that Adrian Toomes comes with. So as normal, they come with 4 different tactics per mastermind. We have here the more harm than good. Basically, you have a fight effect. Each other player discards a spider friend hero or gains a wound. Then here we have the world's changed. And the fight effect is Danger Sense 3. Put all henchman villains revealed this way into your victory pile and then do their fight ability. So this allows you to get a couple free villains into your victory pile if you get lucky, right? You have Take Everything. You may put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. And then you have Don't Interfere, which is Danger Sense 4. You get to draw 4 cards from the top of the villain deck. And if you revealed any this way that are bystanders, you would rescue them. Now, one of the things that this expansion has, and it's piggybacked on the X-Men Big Box expansion, is that it introduces the epic 2-sided masterminds with the epic side. And the epic mastermind is basically the same thing except a little bit harder. In this case, instead of him being a double striker, he's a triple striker. You guessed it. That means for every Master Strike, you add 3 costs to his base attack cost. So this could get really, really expensive and difficult to defeat. Now we'll move on to the second and last mastermind in this expansion. And who better than the Vulture? That's right, folks. We have Adrian Toomes, who happens to be the Vulture. And now we have the Vulture. And he has an attack cost of 8. He's not a double striker. He's only a striker. However, his Master Strike is deadly. You put a wound from the wound stack below each headquarters space. There's 5 headquarters spaces. And they are winged assaults. And whenever a player gains or KOs a hero from the headquarters, the player to their right gains 1 of the wounds below that headquarters space. So this guy really, really can hurt you and hurt the overall game, hurt all the players, because he can really start diluting other people's decks, especially if these Master Strikes come out early on in the game. And he comes with his 4 Mastermind tactics: Lurking Shadow with the fight effect Danger Sense 2. If the rooftop's empty, a villain you revealed enters the rooftops. Then you have this right here, Birds of Prey. It says fight effect, each other player discards a Spidey friend hero or discards 2 cards. Then we have this, Winged Assault. Fight effect, put 2 Winged Assault wounds from under the headquarters into each other player's discard pile. And finally, we have Mid-Air Heist. It says fight effect, you get +5 recruit, usable only to recruit tech heroes. And now with that, we will move on to the heroes in the game, the bread and butter of this game, and see what they have to offer. We're going to start, first of all, with my least favorite hero, or I should say group in this game, and that's Peter's allies. Yes, folks, Peter's high school friends are actual playable characters in this game that we expect to go toe-to-toe with the masterminds and the villains in this game. So first, we'll start off with Peter's good buddy here, Ned. And Ned costs 2 to recruit. He gives you 1 recruit currency of his own. And he has the coordinate text. And the way the coordinate text works, this is borrowed from the legendary encounter system. Basically, coordinate, when a player discards a card that says the word coordinate on it, he or she's allowed to draw a card to replace that, but also the active player, because you discard this on another player's turn, the active player gets to play a free copy of that card you discarded. So it's very helpful for cooperative play. Now, Ned, if you've played a stealth or red hero before him, will get an additional 2 recruit added to his pool. Then we have Michelle here. And Michelle costs 3 to recruit. She gives you 2 recruit points herself. And you may choose a villain or a mastermind, and you could fight it using only recruit this turn. So you cannot combine recruit and attack to defeat said mastermind or said villain. It has to all be recruit. But it's helpful in that sense. Then we have Peter's love interest here, Liz. She costs 6 to recruit. She gives you 4 recruit points herself. She is not a coordinate card, but whenever you do coordinate a card to another player, you may reveal this card to draw 2 cards instead of the 1 that you get for compensation. And then finally we have Peter's very attractive, I don't know why, auntie, May Parker, who has she costs 7 to recruit. She gives you a whole 5 recruit points. She has the coordinate ability, and if you play a spider friend hero before her, each villain gets -2 this turn attack cost. And the next time you fight the mastermind this turn, it gets -2 attack cost as well. So I don't know why. I don't know how May Parker does it. I don't know if it's with her baking or with her good looks, but somehow she makes the masterminds a little bit weaker. All right, now we will move on to my next to least favorite hero in this game, and that is none other than Happy Hogan. And here we have this card here, which is Head of Security. It gives you, he costs 3 recruit, he gives you 2 recruit, and it's a coordinate card, so you could use it to coordinate, and it lets you KO all wounds you gain this turn, which I guess can be helpful in some situations. Then we have this card right here, Watchful Eye. This costs 4 recruit points to acquire. It has 2 attack. It gives you 2 attack to begin with, and if you've played a yellow hero before it, it has Danger Sense 2. And if this revealed any master strikes, it allows you to KO those strikes, and then you could KO a card from your hand or discard pile. So that card can be rather helpful. Then we have this card right here. This is actually, I'm sorry, that's his ultimate card. Let's go with this one first. They look very similar. We have Loyal Friend, costs 5 points to recruit. It gives you a base value of 0 attack. However, it's a coordinate, and it's a striker. And the ways the striker works with heroes is the same way it works with villains. You just count the amount of master strikes that have been played, and you add it to their attack total. In this case, it allows you to attack that number of times. So this card can be a dud for you, especially early on, but as the game progresses, it can be very valuable. And then you have his ultimate, Asset Management, costs 5 to recruit. Again, a base value of 0 attack. But he is a double striker. So again, this means that he will get 2 attack for every master strike that's been played in the game. And again, early on in this game, that might be very irrelevant. But as the game progresses, this card can be a very valuable card. But the iffiness of it all is the reason why, even though it's an ultimate, it only costs 5. All right, then we will move on to the star of the show, none other than Peter Parker. And we have this card right here, Heightened Senses, and it's cost 2 points to recruit this card. It has a base value of 0 attack, but it does have Danger Sense 2, which means it could potentially give you 2 attack. And it allows you to reveal the top card of your deck, and if it costs 2 or less, which quite often it will, it's going to allow you to draw that card. Then we have Avenger in Training. It also costs 2 to recruit. It gives you a base of 2 attack. And it's a wall crawl. And again, as I explained earlier, wall crawl allows you to take that card and place it on top of your deck immediately. Now this card, if you've played a yellow card before it, it has Danger Sense 1. And if this reveals a villain, you could fight that villain then and there. So you actually don't have to wait for a future turn to fight a villain. If you have the necessary attack to defeat that villain or to go up against that villain, you can pursue that option right then and there and have a chance without having to wait to fight that villain. Then we have this card right here, which is Homemade Web Shooters. This costs 2 points to recruit. It gives you a base of 2 attack. Again, this is wall crawl. If you've played a tech hero before it, it gives you Danger Sense 1. And if this revealed a bystander, you're allowed to rescue it. As you can see, all of Peter Parker's, which is typical in Legendary, the Spider-Man cards usually always cost 2 to recruit. They're not really all that, but can combo pretty well with one another. We have here his ultimate here, which is Something Is Happening. It costs 2 to recruit again, 0 base attack. It's a wall crawl and a coordinate, and it's also has Danger Sense 4. It's the only hero in the game with Danger Sense 4, which means you're going to be able to draw 4 cards from the top of the villain deck and potentially add 4 to your attack total. If this reveals any scheme twist, you may shuffle the villain deck. So that might be able to buy you some more time before you see those scheme twists again. And now we'll move on to the next character, which is none other than Spider-Man. So you have Peter Parker and Spider-Man, just like you have Adrian Toomes and Vulture. So again, because this is focusing on just the feature film, it's limited in its characters, and they really have to resort to desperate measures to make up for the content. So first of all, we have Advanced Targeting System. This costs 2 points to recruit. Reveal the top card of your deck, and if it costs 2 or less, you get to draw it. And if you've played a stealth hero before it, or a red hero, you are allowed to draw a card. So that is a pretty cool power right there. Then we have Recon Drone Connection, or Recon Drone Connection, I should say. That costs 2, and it has a 0 base attack. It's a wall crawl with a Danger Sense of 3, so potentially it can give you 3 attack. Then we have this card here, Spider Grip. Costs you 2 to recruit. It has a base attack value of 2. It's a wall crawl, and if you've played a tech hero before it, you get to choose 2 villains in adjacent city spaces, and each of them gets -1 attack cost this turn. So this card can be very helpful if you find that right combination of villains that happen to be adjacent to one another to optimize your turn. And then finally, we have his ultimate right here, which is Friendly Neighborhood ... This also costs 2, has a base value of 0 attack. However, it's a wall crawl and a coordinate card, and you get +3 attack, usable only against the mastermind or villains on the rooftops or streets. So this card in certain situations can be very, very helpful, but in other situations is somewhat irrelevant. And then finally, we'll get to the last hero in this game, and my favorite hero in this game, because he has, even though Spider-Man is probably my favorite superhero character, this is my favorite hero in this particular expansion because it has some of the most powerful cards in this particular expansion, and it is none other than Tony Stark. And first of all, here we have his Genius Billionaire card with a recruit cost of 2, and it gives you 1 recruit and 1 attack, and also happens to be a coordinate card. Then we have here this card right here, Stay Out of Trouble. This costs 4 recruit. It gives you a base value of 2 attack. It's a coordinated card, and if you've played a tech hero before it, it gives you Danger Sense 4. So this card has the potential of giving you 4 attack. So that can be pretty helpful. Then here we have his second best card here, Little Gray Area. It gives you 5 recruit, or I should say you spend 5 recruit to draft it. It gives you 3 attack base value, and if you've played an Avenger card, which in this expansion the only Avenger is Tony Stark himself, it gives you Danger Sense 1, and if this revealed a villain, then villains from that same villain group get -1 attack cost this turn. So this card has the potential of netting you 5 attack, right? You have the 3 attack from its base value here, the potential 1 if you do Danger Sense and you draw a villain, and an additional -1 to the particular villain groups that match that villain that you drew. So potentially, again, it could net you a value of 5 attack. And finally, Tony Stark's ultimate and by far the best card in this game is, as usual, I did all the work. This has a recruit cost of 7, and it gives you 5 attack straight up. It is also a coordinate card, and if another player accepts this coordinate, then at the end of the turn, move all cards that entered that player's victory pile this turn into your victory pile. That I find to be weird. I'm not too sure how relevant that is to the gameplay. I guess since I've only played this expansion solo, I cannot really say. But I love the fact that it gives you 5 attack. You don't have to worry about danger sense or any other modifications. It's just a guaranteed 5 attack. And that's all the cards that this expansion includes. Now let's head over to hear my final thoughts. All right, so what is my final opinion about Legendary Spider-Man Homecoming expansion? Well, first of all, I have to say from a production perspective, I'm not a fan of the direction in which they went with this expansion as far as using stills from the actual movies as opposed to original artwork like they do in the rest of the series. I think that's the last time they did it. It was the first and the last time that they experimented with that. I feel like, first of all, I'm not a big fan of the stills. And second of all, it's a disconnect from the rest of the series from a visual perspective, right? And at this point, by the time they came out with it, there had been so many expansions already, and there's been so many ever since. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if it would have been earlier on in the history of the series, it might have worked or it might have stuck. But no, I'm not a fan of that at all. I don't enjoy the characters here, and it's not the fault of the game, really. I mean, it's like if they're licensed to this particular movie, the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, and they were, relegated to using characters from that specific film, then yes, they're gonna have to get creative. And you've got the Spider-Man's allies, where Aunt May and his classmates from high school are characters that could go up against the thugs of Vulture, and I guess even Vulture himself. It just thematically doesn't make sense. Not a fan of using these characters and how they integrate from a thematic and visual perspective with the other heroes in the Marvel Universe. And then on top of it all, I'm not a big fan of how weak these cards feel. Now, yes, now they want to get thematic because the cards have to be weak because these guys are chumps, right? They're just high school kids. But at the end of the day, the weak cards take away from the gameplay. They make you feel like you're having less epic turns. Now, I will say they do balance the game out well, right? Because they make the villains that you fight in this game just as weak or beatable as the good guys, right? So it's not like it feels unbalanced in that sense, in that regard. But it's not enjoyable for a person who, at least for me, being used to what I've already am used to from the rest of the Marvel Legendary series. So now as far as the characters are concerned, I do think that Tony Stark and Spider-Man, high-tech Spider-Man, are okay. They're all right. They would be probably ranked among some of the worst heroes from the others that I've played in the rest of the series. But at the same time, they are much better than the other 3, right? Which is Peter's allies, just Peter Parker, and Happy Hogan. I feel like Tony Stark and High-Tech Spider-Man are the only ones that I would feel comfortable using with other cards, mixing and matching with other cards and other sets in the line of games. The other ones, I just wouldn't feel comfortable playing anything other than this particular set, the Spider-Man Homecoming set. So that lack of usability, really hurts this game, in my opinion. That's just me. The keywords. Now, they did reinvent or repackage some other keywords from other series. They had the wall crawl feature, which I think is a nice and neat one from Paint the Town Red, which is one of the older expansions, but at the same time, it's still nothing to write home about. They have the coordinate feature, which is actually from the Legendary Encounters line of games, which I think is neat and works well for the cooperative gameplay. Not so relevant when you're playing solo or if you try to play semi-cooperative or competitively. Now, they do add some neat keywords that I think are interesting. For example, the Danger Sense one I think is cool. I probably would have preferred for it to just be Spider Sense and only limited to Spider-Man, but instead they have it as Danger Sense, and some of the other characters like Happy Hogan and Tony Stark have Danger Sense as well. But from a mechanical perspective, I like the fact that it gives you a little bit of control, right? And they mix it, and they match it well with some of the schemes and the other villains and masterminds in this game, because it gives you control of that deck. You can look and peek at the top 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 cards of that deck and get an idea of what's coming, and also control what's coming by rearranging them in the order that best suits your needs. So I think that keyword is interesting and cool. I could have done without some of the other stuff, but I'm all right with that keyword. The striker keyword I also thought was interesting, allowing, you know, weak villains, otherwise very weak villains, to be stronger in potential situations, right? Because these guys are weak, they're chumps, they're nobodies, you know, so they can't just make them right off the bat very powerful, but instead they give an opportunity so that as the game progresses and these master strikes come out, they get a little bit stronger. And again, they do well to balance the game. I'm not going to say that this game's not balanced. When you play it, you feel the same kind of tension that you feel in a regular legendary game. Am I going to win or am I going to lose? That I must give. They repackaged the epic masterminds, where you have two-sided masterminds, and the second side, the reverse side, is a little bit more difficult or challenging or powerful than the opposite side. I think this first started with the X-Men expansion, the big box X-Men expansion, and they repurposed it for this expansion as well. So that's it as far as the keywords are concerned. Now, the thing that I liked best in this game in particular are the schemes. Now, for me, you know, personally, the schemes of Marvel Legendary as a series, as a whole, are probably my favorite part about the game. It's what gives the game direction. It's what makes, more than even so than the variety of all the different heroes and villains that you can have, more than those combinations or those permutations. I feel like the combination of the different schemes combining with the different masterminds really adds to the replayability and the variability of this game. And I'm always interested. One of the first things that I really want to see when I open up a new box are the schemes in those games. And this game had 2 really good schemes. I don't think that any of the schemes were terrible. I found Scavenge alien weaponry to be, I found it to be a little bit too hard, right? And especially, I feel like for solo, I guess, in my opinion at least. Distract the hero, I found kind of pointless. It could get a little bit redundant, I found, as I played it with it. And then these two were the main events. I really liked Ferry Disaster and Explosion at the Washington Monument. I love it when, you know, the designers or the developers take the schemes and make the schemes go beyond the game proper, right? Because you have this, you know, monument that you have to construct. You make 8 separate decks. You get 32 cards and divide into 8 little decks representing 8 different stories or 8 different floors of the Washington Monument. And one by one, those stories are being KO'd. They're being wiped away. And also, you're trying to rescue bystanders there because a certain amount of bystanders die. I think that's really, really neat. I liked the Ferry Disaster expansion, Ferry Disaster scheme, as the ferry actually moves, you know, leftward and then rightward. You know, I found that to be really creative and really cool, and a nice way of incorporating the bystanders. These 2 schemes are home runs for me. They're things that I could see myself re-implementing and reusing with other material in the game. But as far as my overall opinion about this expansion, I'm gonna have to give this a hard pass. I do not see myself wanting to play this expansion by itself, and I definitely do not see myself wanting to incorporate most of the material with other stuff. So I find myself in a catch-22 where it's either, do I try to sell this entire game, this entire copy, make a little bit of money, or do I try to keep some of it and donate the rest of it to somebody, like just give it away for free, because I don't want to keep it all, right? Like it's just going to occupy space. It's just going to collect dust. again, aside from maybe these two schemes that I really like, and maybe Tony Stark and high-tech Spider-Man heroes, aside from that, I'm not very interested. The villains, one villain group feels like a glorified henchman, and the other villain group is literally Vulture's tech, right? His weapons, his equipment. Ridiculous. I'm not interested in that content. It's just the Tony Stark, the high-tech Spider-Man, and two schemes. Is it worth, keeping the rest? I don't think so. Is it worth donating it to somebody else? I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to sit on this for a little bit, see what I ultimately decide. But I will say, unless you are a completionist, a person that wants to have it all as far as collecting, or unless you were a huge fan of the MCU, Spider-Man Homecoming movie, or unless from what you saw of the preview that I showed earlier of the different cards, unless any of those things rubbed you the right way, I would say that this expansion is probably not for you, and it's probably also a pass. So I am sorry to say that. Those are my final thoughts about Marvel Legendaries expansion, Spider-Man Homecoming. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for joining us here at When Harry Met Board Games. I will be reviewing a few more of these expansions that they sent my way. I hope to like the other ones I play a whole lot more than this one. But I will be reviewing those, so stay tuned to the channel to see that. And keep joining us if you want some more relatable, down-to-earth board gaming content. All right, again, this is Harry saying take care, everybody, and have fun gaming. Bye-bye.